Hey all, good evening.
Hello, very good evening.
Let's wait for another minute and then let's go ahead and start. Meanwhile, you guys are able to hear me, see me?
Yes, good evening. We are able to see you, hear you.
All right, let me quickly share my screen too. Are you guys able to see my deck?
Yep.
Yes, able to see it.
All right, thanks. We were not able to hear you. All right, in the interest of time, let's go ahead and start. Quick introduction about me. Rajan here. I work as an senior scrum master in a service-based industry. I have around 16 years of experience. I'm here to talk about design thinking. The agenda of this session is let's have a lively discussion. Stop me whenever you want to. You don't have to wait for me to pass. So let's have a lively discussion. That's the whole intention of this altogether session. So are we good to start?
Yes, Rajan, we are good to start. Yeah.
All right, thanks. So quickly going into the agenda of this session, okay? So we are first going to look at how traditionally we handle any kind of innovation or kind of projects that we undertake, different types of thinking models, why design thinking is relevant even now and even in the future, what are the different characteristics of design thinking or what are the principles of design thinking, and then we're going to look at the life cycle of design thinking in terms of the first would be some kind of an inspire, then you empathize, then you ideate, then you do a prototype and test, then we scale that application or the product. At the end, we are going to look at how SAFe framework works hand in hand with design thinking. So that's the whole agenda of the session. Quickly moving on to these traditional ways of how we look at the innovation. So it goes like this, okay? First, you have an idea. Then you have some kind of a checkpoint to decide how your first screen needs to be. Then you do some kind of a design. Then you go to the second screen checkpoint to understand what needs to be done, interact with the business. Then you design the second screen. Say, for example, you design the second screen. Then you go to you create a business case. You have a well-defined business case of what needs to be done. Then you go to the development. You again have a checkpoint to test how far it is good in terms of development. Then you go for the test and validation. Then you go for the business review. So if you look at this kind of a life cycle of a typical project or an innovation is, it starts with an idea. Then it goes through a typical checkpoint gate-wise phased life cycles. The problem here is you start with an idea. Now, that may not be the first point of interaction to come out with some kind of a product or a service. Design thinking talks about you have to first understand what is the problem from the customer's point of view, right? So idea would sometimes come at a later stage where we try to finalize the scope or try to finalize the requirements. First point that we'll have to look at is what is the customer or the consumer trying to do, understand his pain points, and then come out with some kind of a solution. That should be the starting point. The second kind of pitfall in this is everything is scattered. There's nothing like an iterative development here. You do a design, you do a development, testing comes at a later part, right? Whereas your design, requirements, development all has to go hand in hand. That is not happening here. And also the biggest pitfall here is that I assume the requirements are fixed. I assume the business cases are well defined. And in most of the cases in the real world, that's not the case. There is always an uncertainty in terms of requirements. There is always an uncertainty in terms of business cases. So you got to anticipate uncertainties, right? That's the first thumb rule that any project or any innovation needs to take place. So these are all the kind of pitfalls or disadvantages that what happens during a normal phase-based life cycle, where it's more of a linear approach rather than just you plan a little, do a more of action, take requirement, design, development, testing all together at one point. You don't develop everything and then test at the end. Then you don't have any space for course correction, right? So whereas once you do it all together in a single iterative, say 2 weeks or 3 weeks, come out with some kind of a feedback, and then you do a course correction, that makes sense. So this is a traditional phase-based life cycle for which even for innovative related projects, we follow the same thing. That's the traditional way of looking at things. So these are all the problems. The alternative approach would be more of an iterative way where you do small kind of experiments, get the feedback, understand and accept that there are uncertainties, do a little planning, but more of action. That's the whole agenda of any kind of innovative related projects. And when you do a phase-based, linear-based life cycle related projects, all these innovations are going to fail. One important point is that when you have these kind of check gates things, you can contain failed innovations, right? You can stop an innovation to be a failure. But the real thing is, at the same time, what happens is that you will also miss innovative projects. While you start, you may not have the requirements. While you start, you may not know to whom you're actually trying to cater. You have a small opening, and then that opening widens at a later stage once you get the feedback, make changes, get the feedback, make changes, test it, go that way, where innovation is the way that's the way of innovation works. So this is the real problem in a phase-based cycle. Rather, we will have to move in terms of quick experimental way of doing things and accept that there is no well-defined requirements, or accept there is no any there are no uncertainties. Go ahead, Prasanna. You don't have to wait. You can stop me anywhere. Go ahead.
So Rajan, I see you keep on speaking about innovation project, right? Would you be able to give an example how an innovation project works? Because I'm not even into an innovation project, right? So most of the projects are predetermined. Either we work in the waterfall or the agile model. So basically, our either migration or a solution-oriented project would basically be work, right? So when you say about an innovation project, can you give me an example of like what kind of innovation it is, or at least any kind of projects which starts and leads to an innovation?
Right. So going ahead, we will look into the life cycle, and we will take each of examples of what these are. So this is nothing, any kind of product or service that we are trying to do. We are trying to be how innovative we are. That's the whole thing. As we proceed, we will have answers for this. So just mark a question for now. All right, let's move ahead. So you can stop me anywhere. You don't have to wait for me. So the next thing that what we are talking about is different kinds of thinking models. So you see this graph, right? Where your y-axis is kind of a problem and the x-axis is in terms of solution, where you categorize the problem as known and you categorize the problem as unknown. Similarly for the solution, known and unknown, right? So whenever you know a problem, you know a solution, the best way to go out is in terms of lean thinking, agile 5Y model. You can use anything of this. You don't have any issues in that. But when you go to the upper left bottom, where you have a problem, you don't know what the problem is, but you may have a known solution for it, right? So in that kind of situations, generally they prescribe you for a critical thinking. When they say critical thinking, one tool that what we use is in terms of you go and see for yourself, understand what is the root cause and come back with a solution, where you try to understand what the real problem is and then go ahead. Now, there is another categorization where you don't know the solution, but you might know the problem, right? That may be a case like that, where they do kind of lateral thinking, where you use the 6 thinking hats, like white in terms of giving an idea of getting the facts. Then you have a black color hat where you look in terms of what are the obstacles. Red is in terms of what is your inhibitions, what are your fears. Green is in terms of what do you think in terms of benefit. Yellow in terms of benefit. Green in terms of what improvements you're going to make. Blue is in terms of how you're going to try to create a framework. So you compartmentalize some time to look at how your idea is, look at improvements, look at your fears, look at your obstacles, look at what is the value that you get out of this idea, and then try to proceed. That is the way, one way of looking at lateral thinking. So design thinking is used in cases where neither you know what is the problem, neither you know what is the solution for it. That's the place where design thinking fits in. So it's more of kind of an empathy or human centric approach, where you keep human factor as the focus. Try to understand who is your customer. Try to understand what is he thinking about, what is he hearing about, what does he see, what does he dream, what does he actually want, what he thinks, but what he doesn't say. So basically, try to understand the human factor in it is all about design thinking. That's all that we are trying to look at. So this is a perfect sweet spot for when you're not sure about the problem, you're not sure about the solution, right? So these are the different kind of thinking models, and design thinking is in place when you neither know what is the problem, neither know what is the solution. That's the place where we are going to talk about. Now, quickly moving on to why design thinking is relevant even now. So Prasanna, we will try to look at different examples here. When we say innovative projects, any product or service that what we accomplish, we try to make that as innovative. There's nothing like specific thing like Agile or waterfall. So that's what I try to interpret it as. So we will try to look at different examples, and each of these examples might answer your queries. So now we are trying to try to understand why design thinking is important even now, and that would be important even in the future. Now, say for example, I had gone for a picnic during my school days, excursion. It was sometime 20 years back. I still remember that. The vacation that I spent with my family, the vacation that I spent with my friends, I still remember that. There are some instances where we remember something that had happened, good experiences that had happened 15 years back, 20 years back. But there are some instances what we did yesterday, we might not be able to remember. So these are all experiences, right? This is what business is trying to catch. The experiences that we face, that is what the business is trying to engage with. So today's business world is trying to engage with the customer through experiences. That's where we are trying to talk about design thinking. Now, let me give you my experience that I was trying to buy an electric vehicle 2 years back. I had gone to different showrooms. Okay, I had gone to Ola, I had gone to Hero, I had gone to Ather. Ather tried to portray them as experience centers. They did not call themselves as Ather showrooms. That was something quite different to me, which I did not really understand. Now, typically any shop or any retail outlet that we go, right? Once we step in, there'll be some guy who is escorting us, guiding us right from the start till we exit from the showroom. That's the experience that we have. But I found something very interesting here. This Ather Experience Centers, they had a lot of open space. It was I was allowed to freely move around that experience centers. When I entered, I was allowed to look at different parts. The bike was kept apart. The parts were kept apart. There was battery. There was the engine kept apart, just to experience what is inside the bike without somebody telling me that, right? So I saw a battery that was beneath the water, just to make sure that I can ride a vehicle on a rainy season, on a flooded water scenario, just to portray that I can run it during a rainy times. it tried to shatter all my say, what do you say, the fears or inhibitions, limitations when I go in for how to buy a electric vehicle. Then there was a guy who talked with me. It was kind of a two-way communication where I spent around almost 2 hours. He was patient enough to answer all my queries. Only at the end of that 2 hours, he made me do a test ride, and then he got the feedback to also understand what I'm actually looking at. So I literally spent around 1.5 to 2 hours at that retail outlet, and that was the experience that what Aether was trying to give me. So that is what they are trying to glitch upon. So this experience gives us an outlet for the customer to understand what the business is trying to do. From the business standpoint, it tries to make them understand what is he looking for. So that's the experience that we are talking about. And today's business is all, we like it or not, any business that we take today is all software business. Take, for example, during the Corona period, there were a lot of grocery stores or say garment stores worldwide. They were following a model of brick and mortar case where they literally felt that I don't need to go have an online platform kind of stuff, right? But they all failed, and only the shops or the outlets that had a dual model of both brick and mortar and the online sales were able to flourish. So today, every business is kind of related to IT. Everything is related to software business. So the first thing that what we thought about is the kind of experience, the interaction that what the customer and the consumer is trying to go about. And then everything is related to IT. We'll have to make sure that we have our software really up to date. And if you look at the top 500, top 100 companies, 2 years back, there'll be one company. Then in the next 1 year, you will see a startup company which is just 2 years old coming into the top. So as a company, we got to be business agile to understand what are the market demands, what is the customer actually wants, and he has to fine tune the company in such a way. So the market demands changes drastically. We'll have to make sure that we listen to the customer, hear out to the customer, right? So that's all we are talking about in terms of design thinking. So we are trying to give some kind of a product or a service to the customer. I'm going to quote an example. Say in the year 1980s or 1990s, there was only kind of it was a monopoly. There are only two watches, either HMT or an Alwyn, or the other guy will have a smuggled watch. So the whole idea of having a watch that time was it was kind of like a possession, right? It was an adorable, like we have a jewelry, we buy something. It was like something like an adorable, where it was a kind of a fashion statement that people had. HMT was a quality product, everything was fine. But the point that they missed was they did not have big outlets. They did not care about sales because it was a monopoly. Anytime you go to a small shop, they'll have a small space. A customer will look for a particular watch, get it. But Titan understood that design thinking kind of experience that what the customer has to come about. So they created big outlets, like what I told, open space, showcase all those product varieties. They come in, experience what they're trying to sell and get that. So that was a click that what Titan did. So they understood what is all about, design thinking is all about. The second thing is, in terms of why design thinking is related is, problems are always multifaceted. So we just cannot clinch on one factor and say, that is the problem that I'm going to try to fix. Take for example, two-wheeler market, right? There was a time where the Hero Splendor was a kind of a market leader. Now, why did we buy Hero Splendor? Was one thing was it was mileage conscious, it was durable, right? That was the main factor which factored in terms of market leader, in terms of Hero Splendor. Then came Honda Activa. Now they understood, look, if I'm going to narrow down on only mileage, on only one problem, I am not going to have my own market segment. Okay, there are a lot of youth who is coming into the market. City rides, convenience, stylish, women folks getting into work. So they counted in all these kind of factors. It is okay to have a little less of mileage, bring in that convenience, bringing that color differentiation, pickup. So all these kind of factors they factored in, and they also clinched this market inward. So the point that I'm trying to drive here is, if you're going to narrow down on one problem, we'll not be able to fix any of this. There are multiple factors in it. We'll have to play according to our strength and then go about. And this design thinking is all about human engagement, right? We need to understand the customer. What is he thinking about? What does he say? How are we going to solve this problem? What is the trust factor that we have? So that human engagement is the focus of design thinking. That's the reason why design thinking is relevant even now. The last factor that I'm going to talk about is customer is always the king. He knows, he will not tell you what he wants, but he will say, I don't like it, I like it, but he will not be very specific on what. So from this design thinking, we got to understand what, you got to interpret what is his likings, what is his dislikings, what is he going to gain from it. He's not going to wait for us to have a spectacular product. If he thinks it's no good, he's going to move around and go to another product, to another consumer. So he's not going to wait for us. They got to understand what he wants quickly according to the market demand, and then deliver that. So these are all the factors that tells that design thinking should be the focus on any product or any service that we are going to try to deliver. And these are all considered as innovative products. That's the point here. I take a pause here. Do we have any queries? Shall we move ahead?
Rajan, I see one question is on the chat as well.
All right. You don't have to. All right. Go ahead, Kamil, if you want to go ahead and speak out for this. Let's have a discussion. Is it good to involve business development department at the beginning of the team design thinking, or shall we involve them in? It's a kind of a cross platform, right? It is just not the business. It is altogether a cumulative factor of different roles and responsibilities. So that's what happens at the start. So your point is right. It's not just business development. It would be the IT. It would be the actual customers, in fact, providing us the feedback right from the start of what he actually wants and what he dislikes. So it's a kind of a cross-functional discipline team that we need to have right from the start till the end. Does that answer your question, Kamil? All right, let's move ahead. I will like to take a pause here, and then let's look at a 10-minute video. I would like to play that video. In a nutshell, that is all about, if you're able to listen to this video of what they say, it is a company called IDEO. It's a product design company. They follow design thinking, and they've made thousands of products that what we use, right from goggles, modem, your mouse, whatever we have used. So they made a lot of products, innovative products like that. So IDEO is a company, and they talk about design thinking. This is a 10-minute video. I would like to watch this, listen to what they say. In a nutshell, whatever they say is all about this design thinking, or how we make an innovative product. That's all about. Let me quickly try to play that. You got to confirm whether you're able to.
Deep dive. One company's secret weapon for.
Are you guys able to hear the video and watch?
Yes.
All right. So it's a 10-minute video. Please listen to how the team plays around. They are trying to design a shopping cart. How they go about in designing a shopping cart. That's the whole thing. And the IDEO is the company that it's a team from the IDEO company. Go ahead and watch.
For innovation. We went to IDEO, the product design folk, and said, take something old and familiar, like, say, the shopping cart, and completely redesign it for us in just 5 days. ABC News correspondent Jack Smith tells us what happened next.
9 in the morning, day one, and these people have a deadline to meet.
So welcome to the kickoff of the shopping cart project.
This is Palo Alto, California, in the heart of Silicon Valley, and these are designers at IDEO, probably the most influential product development firm in the world. IDEO has designed everything from high-tech medical equipment to the 25-foot mechanical whale in the movie Free Willy and the first computer mouse for Apple. Smith ski goggles, Nike sunglasses, NEC computer screens. Hundreds of products we take for granted.
The point is that we're not actually experts at any given area. You know, we're kind of experts on the process of how you design stuff. So we don't care if you give us a toothbrush, a toothpaste tube, a tractor, a space shuttle, you know, a chair. It's all the same to us. We want to figure out how to innovate by using our process, applying it.
Project leader is Peter Skillman, a 35-year-old Stanford engineer. Project leader because he's good with groups, not because of seniority. He's only been at IDEO for 6 years. The rest of the team is eclectic, but that's typical here. Whitney Mortimer, Harvard MBA. Peter Coughlin, linguist. Tom Kelly, Dave's brother, marketing expert. Jane Fulton-Suri, psychologist. Alex Kazaks, 26, a biology major, who's turned down medical school 3 times because he's having too much fun at IDEO. Safety emerges early as an important issue.
22,000 child injuries a year, and so they're hospitalized injuries. I mean, there are many others.
And theft. It turns out a lot of carts are stolen. As the team works, it becomes clear there are no titles here, no permanent assignments.
And the other side gives us a lot of help, says, be safe. I'll give you a big red ball on a post, and that says you're a big guy. If you got a ball, you're a senior vice president. You know, what do I care? The desk, the red ball, it's all the same. In a very innovative culture, you can't have a kind of hierarchy of here's the boss and the next person down, the next person down, the next person down, because it's impossible that the boss is the one who's had the insightful experience with shopping carts. It's just not possible.
The team splits into groups to find out firsthand what the people who use, make, and repair shopping carts really think.
Okay, go.
The problem with the plastic cart is the wind catches it. Yeah. And these things have been clocked at 35 across the parking lot.
Oh, man, that's actually a pretty good point. The trick is to find these real experts, and so that you can learn much more quickly than you could by just kind of doing it the normal way and trying to learn about it yourself.
From everything I read, these things aren't that safe either, you know? So probably the seat itself is going to have to be redesigned.
One of the interesting things for me is looking at how people really don't like to let go of the cart, except for the professional shopper, whose strategy is to leave the cart at various places.
3:30 in the afternoon, and the group is back at IDEO. There is no let-up.
Each team is going to demonstrate and communicate and share everything that they've learned today.
A shopping cart has been clocked at 35 miles an hour traveling through a parking lot in the wind.
We were in the store, 2 hours, and it was truly frightening just to see the kind of stuff going on.
You ought to designate some people to make damn sure that the store owner's point of view is represented.
After 9 straight hours, the team is tired. They call it a day.
So,
everybody cool?
Well, that's great. Thanks a lot. We had a great time today. Yeah.
Are you planning to go to Europe this July? Here are your expenses. Flights, 70,000. Stay, 80,000.
IDEO's mantra for innovation is written everywhere. One conversation at a time. Stay focused. Encourage wild ideas. Defer judgment. Build on the ideas of others.
That's the hardest thing for people to do, is to restrain themselves from criticizing an idea. So if anybody starts to nail an idea, they get the bell, you know.
The ideas pour out and are posted on the walls.
Oh, the blind, the privacy blind. Like when you're buying 6 cases of condoms, no one sees. If it doesn't nest, we don't have a solution.
Organized chaos. It's not organized. What it is it's focused chaos.
Vote with your Post-it, not with an idea that's cool, but with an idea that's cool and buildable. If it's too far out there, and it can't be built in a day, then I don't think we should vote on it. Enlightened trial and error succeeds over the planning of lone genius.
Enlightened trial and error succeeds over the planning of the lone genius. If anything sums up IDEO's approach, that is it. Worried that the team is drifting, what can only be called a group of self-appointed adults under Dave Kelly holds an informal side session.
4 or 5 teams. 4 or 5 teams, and we give each team a need area. It becomes very autocratic for a very short period of time in defining what things people are going to work on.
If you don't work under time constraints, you could never get anything done because it's a messy process and go on forever.
Back at the shop, it is 6 o'clock, and the 4 mock-ups are ready for showing.
Baskets also can be, if you think you will have more volume, baskets can be put in.
A modular shopping cart you pile hand baskets onto. A high-tech cart that gets you through the traffic jam at checkout.
That you could mount a scanner on the shopping cart so that you as the customer, as you pull it off the shelf, would scan each item.
One that's built around child safety, and another that lets shoppers talk to the supermarket staff remotely.
Yeah, where can I find the yogurt?
But the adults, again, decide more work needs to be done before the mock-ups can be combined into one last prototype.
Why don't we have all the carts come up here for a second?
I think you take a piece of each one of these ideas and kind of back it off a little bit and then put it in the, design.
The design is still not there. But there's another motto at IDEO: fail often in order to succeed sooner. And some of the team will be up half the night trying to put together a design that finally does work.
Good.
There it is! There it is! So we took the best elements out of each prototype.
The cart, which is designed to cost about the same as today's carts, is different in every other way.
What do you think?
Well, I'm very proud of the team. I think it's great.
Does this work for you?
Works for me great. It's also beautiful.
The cart's wheels turn 90 degrees so it can move sideways. No more lifting up the rear in a tight spot. And you shop in a totally different way. The bags are hung on hooks on the cart's frame. Remember, there is no basket here.
At first, I was a little shocked, but I think you have some fantastic ideas here. It needs a little refining, but I think that it's great. I mean, we would want them.
She also gave us some really good comments about how we can make this thing better.
A lot of hours. Also, an open mind, a boss who demands fresh ideas be quirky and clash with his, a belief that chaos can be constructive, and teamwork. A great deal of teamwork. And these are the recipe for how innovation takes place. This is Jack Smith for Nightline in Palo Alto, California.
All right. So, were you able to listen to this one? You're able to watch this video?
Yes.
Yes, Rajan.
So when their product definition was to come out with a shopping cart, see what was the difference? They did not start as a team and start designing of how a shopping cart needs to be done, right? They didn't do that, right? What did they do instead of that? They did not just like that start, okay, we got to design a shopping cart. Let's as a team start designing. They did not do that. What did they do differently?
They started collecting the ideas from each of them.
Ideas came at a later stage. If you see the idea founder, what did he say? That you don't have to reinvent the wheel. IGUT first has to go to the users of the shopping cart, the shopping cart manufacturer, the repairer. Who's going to use it? Who has actually done it? Who's going to repair it? I'm going to interview them, understand what are their pain points, and then come back, like what you said, come out with different ideas. That's what they did. So one thing what they were talking about is child safety. The other was when they are going to the parking lot, if there was a wind, they were not able to control the shopping cart. Thefts. So they were trying, they did not pick all the ideas together. They first got the problems, then they sat as a team, Then they catered into smaller teams who's going to only focus on one idea, come back with some kind of a solution, test that out. If you see that guy, he told that any idea which cannot be implemented in a short cycle, we are not going to take that, right? And then they got frequent feedbacks, try to make course correction, and then go about. So this is all about any innovative product that we are trying to do in our daily business. This is all about design thinking. Did we get some crux of what is design thinking now? Yes, no?
Yes.
All right. Now let's quickly move in terms of trying to understand what are the characteristics of design thinking. Say, for example, everybody used Amazon for a kind of a book buy, right? So when I go and buy a book in Amazon, what does it do? It gives me several options. It gives me a paperback, hardcover. I can buy a Kindle version. I can buy a CD. It gives me various options to go. It doesn't mind if I buy that particular book from an Amazon publishing company or from another company. It doesn't really matter for them. All that it matters is whether you are trying to, Amazon is a partner in your buying experience. It wants to be a partner in your buying experience. That's the objective of Amazon. It doesn't mind if you want to particularly buy it from an Amazon store or if you want to get it from another vendor outside a city, next street. It doesn't really care. But the platform or the channel should be from Amazon. That's what is all about the experience, the buying experience that we were talking about. Then second characteristic is you always bring the human factor into any of your business. Amazon 5 years back wanted to have channel partners, local vendors. Now, one option for Amazon was put out an advertisement saying that we need partners or vendors from a local grocery shop or a local vendor. They could have given an advertisement and then add vendors for that, but they did not do that. They created kind of chai walas or chai carts where they went into the narrow streets, suburbs. Tea selling was not their motive here. That was just an excuse. Okay. So while selling their tea, what they were trying to have a conversation with all these local small vendors, making a point that what is the advantage of you partnering with Amazon, allaying all their fears, apprehensions. This way, they were able to cater into more than 10,000 local vendors for which Amazon products can be sold. So this is the way how they catered in vendors. So where they kept the focus here is they kept the human factor, they kept the experience, they talked with these vendors, allayed their fears, and they became partners rather than just giving an advertisement and then having a partner. That's what it's talking about. It's okay to have a very good design product, okay? But there should be somebody to buy it, right? That's what it is. You can have a product which is spectacularly good design, but somebody should buy it, right? So design and thinking goes hand in hand. That's the point that what design thinking goes about. So you should have a very good product. At the same time, you need to understand who is the customer who's going to buy it. What are his pains? What are his gains? Why is he willing to buy my product? That understanding or that thinking process should be there. A perfect example is Tata Nano. Tata Nano was a good quality product, 1 lakh price product when it was launched. Okay, but the problem was they did not understand that. Okay, I buy from a middle class perspective. I buy a 1 lakh car, but how much is the cost in terms of maintenance? How much is the inflation in our country? What is the fuel charges that I have to do? What is the insurance amount? So it's typically not possible to counter in all these factors, where here it was more about sympathy rather than an empathy. So Tata tried to market it in saying that it was a poor man's car. Nobody's going to buy a car and take pride in it when somebody says it's a poor man's car, right? So that's the point that what design thinking is. You can have a very good product, quality product, but somebody should pick it, or somebody should really understand why is he buying that, and he should experience that pride in having that. That's the point that we are trying to put on. And the next point is focus on the subject rather than the object. Now, let's take a typical example of an pen. I have a pen. Somebody tells you that, okay, you need to add features to it. Okay, you would say, okay, I'll add in more colors, I'll add in more features in terms of varieties. I'll make sure that the ink is not spilt upon, some kind of features you go. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is, okay, you're going to give a pen, you're going to sell a pen. Why is the customer going to buy it? Is he a guy who is just going to make it as an adorable, as a possession, just to put it on his shirt pocket? Or is he just wants this pen to just have some kind of signatures? Or is he going to write a page every day? So depending upon the customer's way of usage, you got to give him that added feature. That's the point, that it's not enough just you giving features, all features together, when the customer is actually not going to use it. A typical example is this GE baby warmer, okay? We in India have infants, mortality rates are much higher, right? We have low birth weight babies born every year, and there is always a higher mortality rate. Now, one solution for us was an incubator, which saved a lot of lives. But the problem with this incubator is it's kind of it cannot be maintained. It's one thing is the cost factor, where it cannot be used in rural setup. It needs high amount of electricity. We need a technician to use it, and the money factor comes in. So practically having an incubator, large number of incubators in the rural setup is not the actual solution. So GE came up with an idea where I would have a baby warmer, just the amount of feature that is needed to save a baby, which is just 30% of the actual cost of an incubator, which is going to consume less electricity. And I don't need any kind of technician to make use of this. And the maintenance is much lower. So what it focused on is what the consumer really wants, rather than loading all the features into one product and giving them. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And the next point is think beyond the products. Let's take Maruti Suzuki for it. Okay, they control around 40% of today's market. In spite of large competition into it, no matter who comes into the market, they always have that large penetration levels of Maruti Suzuki. One important factor of why it is still a kind of 40% market leader is when they started in 1980s, their target audience was a central government employee who gets a salary of 75K every month. So they calculated a Maruti vehicle, 50,000 per month into 12 times should be the cost of that vehicle, right? That they had a clear target audience, that first buyers would be more from the central government companies. That was in the 1980s. The second point that what they were trying to make is any sales centers should also have service centers in this. If there are no service centers, there can't be sales centers. So they made a India-wise, country-wise sales centers. They were the first vehicle manufacturers who had first-time road service on the road service. Or say, for example, you already have a vehicle, I need to go for a second vehicle. How am I going to sell it? So they came up with different channels. They had a driving school for people who want to have trained drivers. They brought in financial institutions. Insurance was a new penetration, what they wanted. So today, Maruti has a considerable amount of money revenue for insurance. They have altogether a different openings. Nexa was another showroom where they understood that they're going to cater a premium segment. The existing sales centers cannot do that, cannot sell that vehicle. So they came up with altogether a different platform for premium car segments, where more hospitality, where they pamper the customer more. So they just did not worry about how to make a car or how to sell a car. They try to understand from the customer's point of view of why he is going to buy it, why is he going to sell it, second by customers, what happens when the customer breaks down on the road, what happens if he wants to do get his drivers trained, how am I going to get bank loans. So they try to understand from a whole picture rather than just focusing on the car. You get the point?
Yes, Rajan, yes.
All right, so let's move ahead. The next thing is in terms of design thinking is in terms of desirability. When we talk about desirability is the user, why is the user trying to buy that particular product? Why does he need that? Feasibility is from a business standpoint, will I be able to accomplish that? Will I be able to do that? Technical feasibility. Viability is more of a business viability. From a business standpoint of view, will I be able to get revenue out of it? So all these three factors, from user interface, from actual technical know-how and the business standpoint, that sweet spot that what we have is how we make an innovative product, a service, or a product. So that's where we start. The perfect example would be ITC's eChowpal. Okay, this is a program which is very much successful even now in central India. Okay, the products like what you see is Atta Ashirwad, the natural juice, Sunfeast biscuits, all that you buy or all that we eat comes out of this program. Okay, so what did they do is they tried to partner with the farmer community. They funded irrigation projects. They funded money where they spend 90% of the money to build check dams, where the farmer has to spend around only 10%. So they helped the farmer community to build check dams, irrigation systems. They would give weather forecasts. They will give best practices of how to make wheat or whatever cereals that they make. So they partnered with them. They did not consider this farmer community as just where you go buy those grains and then make these products. So they had a relationship, they partnered with them, and whatever the crops that they cultivated, they were able to, the produce was given to ITC and they made these products. So there was a perfect balance between how much viable is this business opportunity, what is the customer needs, how is it technically possible. So that was one example. You see this example, you guys have seen this VCR remotes. This was something that people used in 90s. You guys have seen this one?
Yes, Rajan. Yes.
So this is a typical VCR button. Yeah. Ideally, there'll be around 60 to 70 buttons in it. Nobody knows why these many buttons are there. Ideally, we would have used a channel change, volume, power on, power off. I would have never used any of these buttons before, right? So from a customer point of view, look, let's not load all features. Let's not load all factors in and give them together. The other alternative is this Amazon Fire Stick remote. Very less buttons, minimalistic features, which are to be used. So more than looking at giving all the features loaded in, it is always better to give the least features, which is very minimal, which the consumer is going to look at. So this is all the basic characteristics of design thinking.
Rajan, sorry to stop you, right?
Go
So
ahead,
if you
go
see,
ahead.
even in this picture, what you have showed across, right? Even today, our remote has all these features which is there currently, right? But the Fire Stick doesn't need all these things, right? But
Right.
even if you see today's remote, the only option is that you see still a lot of options which is available.
Right.
But that is the primary remote. On the secondary remote, you don't need all these features, right?
Correct.
If you see, even with a lot of innovation, we still are with the old design which is there. I don't think there are a lot of things which are changed. Say for an example, even in a mobile, right?
Perfect.
There are a lot of
example.
settings. There are a lot of settings which are there. Half of the settings I don't use except the display settings, sound and stuff, right? Still, there are so many features which is being given.
Correct. 30% of the features is what we use in mobile. Most of that others ones we don't use. You're given the right statement. Still, it's not a kind of an innovative part. You're bang on that. Correct. So this is what we are talking about in terms of characteristics of design thinking. All right, now we start looking at the life cycle. Okay, the first stage is in terms of inspire. So that's the first life cycle of any product or any service, that innovative product. Forget the innovation, any product or service that what we are trying to get. So they've tried to categorize this. First, you set a vision, then you create a stretched goals, then you create a design brief. We will talk about what is a design brief. Then you try to create metaphors. Then you try to widen your aperture. We will try to look into each of this. So the first thing is I need to have a vision. What am I going to make? Why is this product for? So you've got to have a clear-cut purpose or objective of why we are doing it, right? So that's the thing that you would get once you have a problem statement, that what the video that we saw, have a problem statement. From that, try to get some kind of a vision and go ahead. A clear-cut objective or a purpose why we are trying to make this product. Then we try to create stretched goals. Try to go in for a new market, new opportunities. Take for example, Google's CEO says any goals that they set, whether achievable or not, is another point. But they will always go for stretched goals 3 or 4 times more than what the team can achieve. They will never go in for a conservative goal. That's how Google works. Samsung uses this kind of design thinking process right from the year 1970s. Samsung says that they use this principle right from 1970s. Where what they talk about is, okay, I need to have a goal. I need to have a short-term goal. I need to have a long-term goal, right? So they try to categorize this as 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, how the company is going to be. So for the first year, how they look at is what are the new products or user interfaces from a business unit, not from a company or organization level. What are they going to learn? Then from a 2 years perspective, they look at new platforms or concepts from across the organization. For a 5 years, what they from a executive level, what they look at is investment plans, new technologies that are going to emerge. They look at that and try to come out with goals. From a 10 years perspective, how they look at is, how is my company going to be 10 years from now? They create a roadmap. So they try to set the goals in terms of time plans. One would be a short term, and then would be at the mid level, and then would be at the future level. That's how they go. So talking about stretch goals, right? Flipkart, when started, was hardly a 1 million or a 2 million company. But their goal was to become a 10 billion company at so year. They became a 20 billion company on that time. So how did they, from a million-based company valuation, how did they become a 20 billion company? They had this kind of flash sales, right? Both Xiaomi and Motorola. They were a small company, but they had the courage and persuasion to connect with these guys and make an exclusive partner and do this flash sales. And that was one of the reasons why their valuations were increased. So they had a bigger goal, stretched goals in terms of revenue, and they were able to succeed. So the point here is never fix in for a conservative goal, always go in for a stretch goals. That's the point. The projects that what we do, we always saw project charters, right? The charters would have what is the objective, why we are making it, timelines, budget. Similar to it, all these kind of innovative products, they call that as a design brief. Design brief is something like a set of objectives, the budget, the timelines, what we are going to make, why are we going to make this particular product or a service. So that's how it goes. And this design brief will help in terms of measuring whether I am able to succeed in whatever I plan for. Big Bazaar had a very good kind of design brief where Kishore Biani said this way. So look, there was a time period where there are no festivals, no hangama, shopping, there are absolutely no shopping. So he has to create that environment. He has to create that festival-like scenario. So what he came out is the Republic's Day sales, where there were deep discounts. I even remember that time where people used to take old newspapers, weigh it there in Big Bazaar, and they used to buy products. So they were just trying to attract people to come into the retail outlet, and they gave big discounts for a week, both on online and offline platforms. So his design brief was very clear. I need to make a festival-like atmosphere in my market space, have deep discounts, get in revenue. Otherwise, that shopping period was kind of a dull period. I got to create that environment. That was his design brief. Then have metaphors. So I think we studied this in terms of PMP and ACP, where ordinary words would just give that meaning, rather a metaphor would give altogether a different viewpoint, right? Mahindra had this, when they sold this SUV, they already related to a cheetah, stability, agility, the speed. So that would connect with the customer more easily than saying that it would go in this speed. It's a stable vehicle. When you say compare that with cheetah, it readily connects with the customer. Honda City had this coined words like tall by, man maximum. So tall by was less wider, able to handle city traffic. It was trying to convey that meaning, a single word, but it conveyed a lot of meaning that connected with the customer. So have this kind of coined these words which could be understood by the customer more easily rather than putting it in many sentences. That's the point that we are trying to make here. And aperture is something like you have a small opening and then you try to widen it, right? That's how we try to look at it. So you have a lot of ideas, then you try to test them up, then look for opportunities for that. Big Bazaar, for example, in the leadership team, it was not just techno professionals, management professionals. He brought in a lot of people, leaders from other disciplines, anthropologists, social scientists. He brought in gender diversity. The point that he was trying to make it, there is no one way of looking at things, and there's no one way of looking at a problem. A problem can be solved many ways. So bring in a wider picture, bring in people from outside the disciplines. They would give a better view of the problem. That's the whole point here that I'm trying to make here. Mahindra leadership always have a training program, a week training program at his alma mater in Harvard School. One difference that what he made sure was, it was just not the top leadership team that goes to Harvard for a week's training. It is also their spouses. The point that he was trying to make is bring in that empathy to understand to the family members what the other one is trying to do. And Mahindra was more of appointing global managers altogether. And if there is any global manager who's going to get into it, the other guy who's getting into this Mahindra company should know how professional it is being run. So they were looking at new ideas, new openings that need not click at the earliest, but they try it. If it fails, it fails. But a new opening would always give a better opportunity. That's the point. Even if it's a small opportunity, try to tap on it and go ahead. So this is how we start a product in terms of setting goals, having stretched goals, have a clear objective, and then use coin metaphors, and then proceed about. So this is how you start any product or service. Then the second life cycle is you start empathizing. Empathizing is from a customer point, what are his pains, what are his gains, right? We saw this IDEO video. So when they try to make washing machines, what they do, they go and literally wash with others. When they try to make a device for a medical team, they go stand with the doctors, look what is he doing. So when they try to make a shopping cart, they went to a mall, try to understand what the customer is doing. So that is all about empathize, to understand the customer at his side. That's the way how. So then they collected the problems, right? From the problems, they were not problems in such a way. They were data. From that data, they were trying to interpret that as patterns and try to solve the problem. Child safety was one thing. Okay, what do I do for child safety? What do I do when the shopping cart was in the parking lot and there was wind blowing? How do I reduce the speed? So for each problem, they try to create a pattern. They try to come up with an idea and then try to solve it. That's the point. That's the place where empathize is all about. Let me give you an example of water purifiers. We already had a market leader, Tata AquaGuard, which was not affordable by all. So Hindustan Lever came up with an idea. How do I make a water purifier which is affordable, right? So they came out with a different kind of technology called Purite water purifier, where it was it was affordable, less cost, and they tried to understand and empathize. If I do not buy a water purifier, I got to boil it and drink it. They calculated, they did the math saying that for a year, it would take around 3 cylinders. So to match it from a maintenance cost, I will design a water purifier which almost matches that cost. So less electricity, quite affordable, less maintenance cost is what they were trying to empathize, and it was a hit for an affordable water purifier. And the other thing is, there's no one way of listening to a customer, right? So when you try to understand, focus groups is what we learned in PMP or ACP. Focus groups is one where different partners, vendors, different stakeholders try to ideate, understand what is the problem, and then go on. The other channel is unfocused groups. Okay, these are all people who are using my product or using my service, but let's have another group who doesn't use it, who dislikes my product, who's not willing to use my product. So have a conversation with them to understand why they don't use it, what is their inhibitions, what is their fears, and then come out with some kind of ideas. So whenever you make a product, you should be the first customer. Royal Enfield CEO Siddharth, any variant that comes from his factory, he would be the first customer to ride that bike or bullet. He will go to Himalayas, do a test ride, and come back, give the feedback to the company operators. So that's how he does that. So he is the first customer who's going to give the feedback. So when Steve Jobs gives products, he is a kind of an practicing Zen philosophy of minimalistic use of life in terms of lifestyle, right? So he came out with products which he likes, right? You should be the first customer. When you like it, automatically the other customer would also like. PayPal CEO once said that he was about to do some kind of funding to a charity organization, but he did not have a clear idea to which charity organization he needs to fund. So immediately what he did was he spent 24 hours without any money on the streets. He slept on the street to just understand how it feels to be an underprivileged citizen, right? And then he tried to come out with what is the needy really need. So he came out with that. He sat on the street, slept on the streets for 24 hours without any money. And then he realized where this money should go or which charity it should go. So that is what we are looking at. You got to be the customer first. You got to understand the pain, gains that what goes through. Technology plays an important role here, right? Netflix first started with renting CDs, right? So when Netflix tried to rent these CDs, their data analytics team, data science team were pretty sure what is the age factor, who is going to buy it, how many CDs he has bought before, what kind of genres he's liking. So they had all the data to strategize their decision. Big Basket, for example, Kishore Biani always used to sell from an Indian market perspective. People always buy between the first week of the month, once the salary comes in. That's the way how people buy, right? And they always buy full basket. They don't buy one product or two products. They buy a full basket or a lump sum for the whole month. And the customers are very particular on shipping timing. They got to whenever the shipping timing is told, we got to stick to that. If there is a delay, the customer doesn't like that. So all these kind of insights you get once you have your technology tuned in, get all those data information so that you can strategize for a better product. And all problems cannot be solved. Problems that is understood is half solved, and it has the highest impact, and then try to solve that rather than solving all problems. That's the main funda of empathize. And the last point is we use this empathy max, that what we are talking about, right? From a customer point, Whom are we talking with? Whom are we empathizing with? Who is the stakeholder here? What does he do? What does he say? What does he think? What does he say, and what does he do? Actually, he may do something really opposite than what he says. So try to read from a customer's point of view using this kind of tools like empathy maps to understand what is his liking, what is his pain points, what is his dreams, needs, and then come out with it, right? So, and each business has a purpose or an objective. From an hero splendor perspective, it is more of mileage, durability, quality. But from an Honda Activa, the objective is more stylish, convenient, city ride. That is the objective of why they buy this vehicle. From an 350cc vehicle, it's more of riding it in a challenging environment. So they're all doing the same thing, but their objectives of why we buy that product is quite different. So we got to be clear of why, what is it trying to deliver, or what is the purpose or objective. That's the whole point. And just don't listen to just your customers. It can be a partner, right? From your Amazon perspective, they talk with the vendors, they talk with the partners. Starbucks has an policy where even the temporary employees would have a medical policy. So they don't just cater to customers. Partners, vendors who's working with you are also kind of customers to you, where you got to understand what do they do. So that's the point here. So first, in the inspire part, we try to look at objectives, stretched goals, had a plan for a short term, long term. The second part, what we try to understand what the customer actually needs. Now, quickly moving on to idea. Now comes, we got all the problems. Now we got to come out with different ideas. When you come out with an idea, you don't have to validate that these ideas needs to work or not. That's not the thing. We got to pull in as many ideas that it may be crazy enough, mad enough, that's not a problem. But we got to come out with all ideas. We don't look at validate it. And then for selecting, we try to do a divergent thinking, but convergent thinking. But from a looking into ideas, we look at different perspectives, different factors. That's why we call it as divergent. And then all sit together on a particular idea and then say which will work and which will not work. Let's take Tanishq Jewelry as an example, right? Once they started their outlets, they came out with this 18 karat gold. They had a lot of big outlets, more open space like what we were talking about. They were more focusing on this 18 karat gold, which is kind of a pure gold. But from an Indian consumer market, people always got where we are price conscious, and we always got a 22 karat gold, right? And what they saw is any shop, there was always a bargain, there was always a trust factor, all that. So once they started this outlet, they came out in terms of quality, why 18 karat gold needs to be bought, but that really didn't work out. So they did a course correction, understood, moved from an 18 karat gold to a 22 karat gold. Parallelly, what they came out with, a price tag in each of their products, and they built in a caratometer where they were the first jewelry kind of company or a shop where they came out openly saying, this is the percentage of gold, this is what is it, this is the price tag, no bargains. That brought in trust, and they were also kind of market leaders, right? So bring in that kind of trust and trust factor and empathy to it is one factor that what we are talking about. And ideas don't need to be a kind of one chunk of idea, one big idea. It can be kind of small blocks, small improvements that we make. It can be a small idea, then you try to improve it on top of it. When Flipkart tried to come out with this kind of book sales, they first started with a selling book, right? That's fine. They were selling books. They came out with some kind of a credit card way of buying. Already in India, the credit card penetration was much lower that time, and they could not expand their market. Then they thought, okay, how do we expand that market? They came out with a cash on delivery. Okay, they came out with the cash on delivery, then that expanded that market. But the problem came was there are a lot of money leakage, there are a lot of leakage that was happening, returns were huge. So that was the problem. So they came out with an idea, like, let's have our own logistics company, a subsidiary company, which would collect this cash, and the returns also will be less. That was how they built this complete Flipkart product. They started small, tried to add on to that. First credit card, then cash on delivery. They had problems there. Then they brought in logistics, and they're going to keep on adding to these kind of features. That's the point that I'm trying to put across. These ideas need not be one large, big chunk of idea. It can be small things which could be iterative, which can be improved. And we were talking about this. We saw this IDEO video, right? If you saw this team composition, I don't know whether you noticed when they were trying to introduce themselves, it was not just the business or the technical team there. There was one guy whose major was biology. There was one guy who was a social scientist. So bring in different disciplines for a simple matter that they would give a different perspective. Google has that, Apple has that, like what we talked about, Mahindra has that. The leadership management team have different disciplines, right? From science, humanities, different altogether to give a different picture. Arvind Eye Hospitals is one among them, where it's a pioneer in South India eye care, where they give an affordable eye health care. Okay, so they are kind of pioneers in South India. The founder, Dr. Govinda Venkataswamy, was inspired after seeing McDonald's. So it's not that a software industry has to inspire from some technological company, right? This doctor got inspired from McDonald's. His thought process was, look, there was an affordable burger. There were many branches. They were able to make quality burgers at an affordable price, irrespective of who makes that. If somebody can make a burger, why can't I give a health care at an affordable price? That was his inspiration. That's how he says that. And innovation need not be kind of an reinventing the wheel. For Kishore Biyani, it was not Walmart or Best Buy which was the inspiration. It was a Chennai-based store called Saravana Stores. What fascinated him was, generally all these kind of Walmarts or Best Buys kind of stores, these stores would always be in the suburbs. They'll be outside the city, and it would not be like a floor-wise thing. It would be on a flat surface where they were used to sell all kind of groceries. But what fascinated him was all these stores, chains, Saravana stores, was on the heart of the city. And for each kind of product, it was in each floor. It really fascinated him. What he understood was that we just need not go with unsaid rules or practices. You can fine tune it. And he tried to inspire from a Chennai-based store rather than a Walmart. That's what the point is. And you don't need to have assume things, right? Say, for example, today's fans need not have blades. Tires need not have airs. There is an advantage and a disadvantage for it. But when they try to make a fan, they said that why do we need a blade? I can make a fan without a blade that will have more air circulation, that will have less noise pollution. Tires need not be filled with air. I don't need to have a spare tire. So when you try to make a product or a service, you need not go with unsaid rules or unsaid practices. We can fine tune it. We can even challenge those rules. That's the point we are trying to make. And just don't look at the users from a user's perspective. Look who's not using it. So create that as a market. Maruti created a market for insurance. They created another subsidiary company for all these kind of vehicle insurances. They thought that is a revenue making chain where they do that. So try to come out with who are our non-users and try to build an idea behind it. One kind of strategy is called blue ocean strategy. What the technocrats or the business leaders say, other than Google and Facebook, the number of non-users are more rather than users. Only for these two companies, they say the number of non-users are less. But for all the other organizations, they say the number of non-users are more than the users. So this gives an avenue to look upon why that customer is not willing to buy my product. So that this blue ocean strategy talks about, categorizes these non-users as three kinds of categorizes the customer. One who is not happy with you, one who doesn't want to do business with you, one you never saw them as a customer. Let's take a simple example that we try to make a car, okay? Let's take this first thing as unhappy customer. I make a car. Why are they dissatisfied customers? Because they wanted an high-end premium car. I am selling, say, a Maruti 800 or an Alto, which is from a smaller segment. Okay, what do I need to do for that? Why are they not aware? They are not aware that there are other product variants. So what could be a solution? These are just ideas where, okay, I have bought a car. Now, how do I incentivize to upsell and buy, make him buy my premium car segment rather than another car? So they're trying to classify this. There'll be another customer where he's not willing to buy my product because the cars are wider. He's a premium car segment. They're high-level executives. They don't like to drive the vehicle in traffic. Okay, for them, you need to have well-trained drivers. For having a well-trained drivers, I need to have some kind of a driving school. Or unexplored users, like say tourists, foreigners who wants to use my car. They don't want to buy it. Okay, what is the other channel that what? I don't have any kind of rental model facility. So bring in these kind of new opportunities from a non-customer usage and try to pull them as your customers is one way of looking at bringing in new opportunities. I take a pause here before we move to prototype. Any questions till now? How can we differentiate RCA, corrective actions, design thinking? Asking this from what is not clear? Go ahead, Prasanna. You're talking on mute.
No, Rajan, I meant all clear.
Okay. Who's this? Somebody wants to elaborate it. Swaminathan, you want to go ahead? Let's have a discussion. You don't have to.
Rajan, Shweta here.
Go ahead, Shweta.
I do have a question. The topic was interesting, but I was thinking how many industries are, keen to have a design thinking model, because wherever I have worked, we are more into the traditional way wherein we know the solution, or if for this problem, we will go with this solution. But when we think about design thinking, it is where we don't know the solution, we don't know the problem either. Then what is the percentage of this design thinking being implemented in the industries? Is it only where we are interacting more with the customers, like the front end, wherein we have customers coming into us daily, wherein we have more interactions with the customer, or everywhere we are seeing this being implemented?
See, like what I said, Samsung started this design thinking horizon way of planning right from 1970s. So in our day-to-day work, in our, say, in a typical software industry, this is not used. But from a perspective like companies like Google, Flipkart, Amazon, all these kind of product-based companies, they very much use this. It need not be from an IT industry. It can be for any product or service that they do. So all these examples that take for Maruti, they understood that customer is their prime focus, right? So any examples that we take, Tanishq, all these kind of people, they've followed this kind of design thinking. We might not use that word, coin that word, but the focus here is from a customer viewpoint. Why are they willing to buy it? What are their pains and gains? Quickly do a prototype and test. That's how we do it. So, but in a normal way, if you take a typical IT industry, I don't think we use it unless and until we work in kind of industries like Apple or Google. But predominantly, somewhere or the other, this is being used.
Okay.
There was a question in the chat, Swaminathan, you want to? I really did not get how can we differentiate RCA corrective actions and design thinking, asking this from an example from a sharp color. So if you look at the video, you want to elaborate on this, Ramnathan, or somebody wants to elaborate on this? All right. So in that video, what did we see? We first they started looking at the problem, then they try to come out with ideas. Then they did some kind of a quick prototype, try to test it, work, got the feedback. So typical kind of iterative way of looking at this. That's what they did, right? So that's what we're talking about. Major challenge we see in dissatisfied customer, how to go ahead with design things, speaking to the storage. So we, Karthik, you want to elaborate on this one?
Yes, sir. So I basically work on the service industry side and on the BPM side. So there is a lot of challenge with the quality with of the work which we provide, and that causes a lot of dissat. So how can we utilize design thinking here to make sure that we resolve those challenges?
So once the first thing what they are trying to look at is you're trying to identify who is the one who is dissatisfied, right? Then you get that feedback, and once you get the feedback, you try to understand what is their problems. Then you ideate. So that's how it is. So you try to come out with an alternative solution to pull them in, so that they like it. So it's so you bring in that human factor in of who's liking it, who's not liking it. Talk to them, understand their concerns, and then try to make a product which suits them. That's the whole point here.
Okay, thank you.
Any other points? Any other thoughts that what you
Rajan, just correct my thought over here. This is in continuation with Karthik's question, wherein if we are with the service, providing the service, where we have limited participation in the design thinking or in connecting with the actual customer and the problem. So what I understand here, you have to be having good communication and collaboration with the people who will actually interact with the customers. Is that the way that we can contribute towards design thinking? Or how are we?
Communication is one factor, but the crux of the matter is that team should understand what they say. That's the main purpose of that, right? So it should be a cross-functional team, just not your techno management thing. The guys who actually do it from a business standpoint of view, different altogether a different discipline team who try to quickly understand what are their pains and gains. So that's the point. It should be a cross-functional team. That's the crux. Communication is not the factor here. The focus should be in understanding the customer.
Okay, and for example, if we are not involved in kind of a cross-functional team, how are we going to make ourselves like showcase ourselves that we would want to be taking part in a cross-functional team, Rajan?
Ideally, everybody cannot be a part, but at least there should be an representation from every roles or everything. So typically that's how a company runs, right? Everybody cannot be part of that, but there should be a considerable amount of representation for different roles and representations within the organization. That's how we should go.
Okay. Thanks, Rajan. Yeah.
Any other discussion points?
Yeah, Rajan, I have one more thing to bring into light. Here you mentioned normally in design thinking, we look for the ideas which can be implemented in a short term so that we can reach the customer soon and we can take that advantage. But let's say in this scenario, we don't know the problem, we don't know the solution. Is there any time frame that within 1 year we will try and see if we can identify the problem and we can implement the solution? Is there any time frame, or let's say we started this project or we started understanding what is the problem, but we couldn't understand what is the exact problem? Then what is for how long we can go understanding the problem or identifying the solution for that?
Yeah. So 1 year would be kind of longer period, but when you don't know what is your problem, what the prototype is the way of how you do it, right? So that can give you more opportunities to understand what the problem is. So the whole idea of why create these prototypes is to quickly make decisions. Planning is minimum, the actions are maximum. Quickly make decisions whether I can make an investment. So Samsung does this, meaning they quickly come out with a prototype with this technology, say they take it for 3 months, 6 months, or say even they do it for 1 year. After that, they are able to take a decision. This is not going to work out. There should be no budget for this particular investment. They're able to come out to that decision when it doesn't cater to that problem. So this prototype is the answer for all your unknowns. That's the point that I'm trying to make.
Okay, that is how they decide whether to
So
move
that would give you a decision whether should I make an investment or not. So that's why they have this shorter plans, mid-level plans till 5 years. Then how they want to perceive their company in 10 years. So 10 years is a longer period. We just cannot go, but there'll be some kind of an investment. But for the first 1 year, what do I do? First, second year, what do I do? Fifth year, what do I do? They have plans for that. And the prototype is the way of how to decide whether I have to make an investment. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. That's fine. But at least they are able to make that decision instead of just delaying that, have a project for going on for years and years.
Yeah, that will be an expense, a lot of expense. Thanks.
Any other queries? All right, let's move to quickly to prototype and test, right? So we had all ideas and the focus was whether it works or not, it doesn't really matter. Collect all the ideas, let that be crazy or mad. I don't really care about it. Now I have hundreds of ideas. I try to select which idea will work or not. Now, how do I know which idea will work or not? I pick the top 10 or top 5 and then try to come out with some kind of an experiment life cycles. So when I see a picture, it conveys thousands of words, many words, right? Similarly, prototype is something that is worth 1,000 meetings. That's how they talk about. So once we have this, like one that you talked about in terms of investment for 2 years, 3 years, these prototypes will help me to understand, secure funds, and build that minimum viable product and try to sell that out. That is why this prototype is all about. Why prototype is determined? Let's take an example of Flipkart, okay? Flipkart had this flash sales for Xiaomi and Motorola, right? It was partially success. There were some people who were able to buy it. There were some people who, when the website was not working. For a simple reason, there was high traffic. The traffic loads were such in a way that for an hour was equal to 4 days of traffic that IRTC used to get. That's how Flipkart put it, Bansal put it such a way that the traffic for an hour was equal to 4 days traffic of how much IRTC would take. But they did not anticipate that. For that reason that it was not tested properly, what happened was they had to lose 10% of the customers. Then they came out with a decision of app only and not website only, because they thought their competitor like Myntra always had only app only platforms rather than website only. They just tried to move away from the problem, escape from the problem rather than actually correcting it. It created a lot of confusion within the management, within the employees, within Flipkart, within the consumers, why both platforms can survive together. It can have websites also, it can also app, but they came out with that decision and later they corrected it back after doing all that prototype testing, saying that they have dual platforms, both from a website and from an app perspective. So that is how prototype or quick experimental tests are really important for our sales revenues. I would give you an example of how prototype will help us to plan or give directions of how to proceed. Tanishq is kind of an like what we see. It's a gold manufacturing industry. So generally what they do is they use a container to melt this gold. It so happens that the container, there'll be a lot of residual gold that is set in this container, and that cannot be taken off. So there'll be a kind of residual, and worldwide, they say that this has to be taken, this cost has to be taken. There'll be a lot of gold in this container when they melt, and this cannot be used, or it cannot be taken. There is one guy in this Tanishq factory, his name is Rajashekar in Huzur factory. His thought was, what will, worldwide, it is considered that the container that uses melts this gold, that will have residues, and that is kind of an wastage for the company or the organization. This man called Rajashekar, he's a factory operator. He thought, why don't we crush this container? So what he literally did was, he rented a road roller, crushed this container, and he was able to get 4.5 kgs of gold. Nobody told him to do that, but he just tried to test it. And this is what will give you in terms of clarity. So he was able to save 4.5 kgs of gold. This is a real incident that happened in the Hosur factory. So this is how raw tests that we do can give in more clarity of how we go about. Booking.com, most of them would have used this worldwide. It's a practice where whenever you go book your airline, hotels, whatever it is, right? Car rentals, they use this Booking.com. They have a company policy. Any employee can test any application that is related to their organization. You don't need to have any permission to test any of these, any of the applications that they cater in. Okay, because of this company policy, every year they say 20,000 to 25,000 rigorous test happens within the company, and they try to detect defects. It is better for the employee to detect it rather than the customer detect. That's how you don't need to have any permissions to test any of their applications. That's the company policy they have. And always you try to experiment or do which has the more impact. Netflix, for example, when they tried to first rent CDs, right? The first experiment that what they did was put a normal postal envelope, kept that CD, they tested it, whether the CD can be safely delivered to the customer. That's the first experiment that they did. So you got to understand what is the impact one. You don't have to do it in sequence. Which is more impacting, do that first rather than doing it in sequence. And more importantly, prototypes can fail. It need not be the case where every time it's a success. Prototypes can fail. More important is you make an inventory of it at some day, sometime, a later date. It can give a new opportunity for some other guy to test it, or you already have an inventory of knowledge that what this prototype failure thing had happened. So you get that knowledge, and also there'll be a different perspective to look upon at a later stage. So the point here is do some kind of quick test. This helps in planning of how I proceed further, whether I got to stop here or I can proceed. That's the whole point here. Now, prototype is all fine, right? Until and unless I make the product that can be scaled enough, that can be used by billion people or million people, whomever I'm trying to cater it, it's no use. So prototype is just a mask, right? So whenever you try to create a product or a service, first thing is you try to come out with a problem, come out with an idea, then you execute that idea, then you convert that into product. So the whole purpose of what we did before on all these life cycles, the exact life cycle importance is how do I scale? So when I start with the problem, you got to look at from this perspective of how do I scale that? Reliance Jio is a spectacular example of how do they scale. They're just not a, when you ask Ambani, he will never say that it's a telecom network company. He would say you get wide range of options. I can listen to music, I can see reality shows, I can see movies. I have partnered with Facebook, with WhatsApp. I have a GeoMart. I can have a say you can have this collaboration with GeoMart where from the WhatsApp I can sell products. So he gets a lot of opportunities, lot of avenues. He always looks at how his product or service can be used by large number of people. That's how we got to look at. So when you try to look at scaling your product or service, the first thing is you got to focus on a main thing. So when Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they're thick friends, and his father incidentally asked, what is the reason for your success? He asked each one to separately write it on a paper. Unknowingly, they both use this word focus. That is, you got to know what is your strength, you got to know what is your limitation, play it accordingly, and not load everything together. Apple's strategy was simply that. So when Steve Jobs came for the second time to Apple, before that, there were 15 to 20 platforms where the employees were not clear of how the company is going. The customers are not clear of what kind of products Apple is going to produce. Then he tried to narrow it down, come out with just 4 platforms, try to have minimalistic features, deliver that perfectly. That's how we created. So according to your strength, have an objective, have a clear target audience, play it accordingly. That's how we try to scale it up, not look at many things at the same point. Google has this policy where 20% of all employees need not work on their actual related projects. They can work on projects where they like to. It can be IT related, anything, volunteer organization, it can be anything. Surprisingly, what they see is that the projects that come out of this 20% of time that the people have taken, the products that have come out of this 20% time is Gmail, Gmap, AdSense, where they advertise things on the content page. So these are all some of the products that was created in this 20% of time where they were not actually given that work. They took up projects which they like to. That's the point here. And OKRs are one kind of an measurement criteria where we look at how we scale. That's one measure that is widely used in Google. When we say this objectives and key results, they don't cater to kind of current status, like burn down chart, burn up chart, how many defects are there. They don't try to cater to that. We looked at it, right? Next 5 years, next 10 years, where are we? That kind of aspirational objectives, measurement criteria, this OKR tries to cater. When you do this OKRs, what it helps Google is, it tries to help how am I going to execute this plan? What is going to be my scaling plan? That's how OKR helps Google in terms of making objectives which are aspirational and how my company is going to be after 5 years, 10 years. Now, let's take a simple example of what we did, we talked about, right? Inspire is one thing. So if I have to create an OKR, I've just given an example here. This need not be exactly right thing. We can always fine tune it. So if I want to have an idea, if I have to empathize, we have an objective saying that we got to focus on the problem that we have to solve. Okay, I got to focus on the problem I had to solve. Okay, what will be my measurement criteria? I should have formed a team. I should have known who is the key stakeholders. I should have understood what are the problems which have highest impact. So come some kind of measurements which are more, this can be still fine-tuned in terms of time specific, all this can be done. So similarly, these are some kind of examples. Say, for example, when you're trying to ideate, we are trying to look at how have I have at least top 5, what are my top 5 prioritized ideas? When I try to look at prototype and test, whether I have given the feedback, whether I've got the feedback, whether I've been tested, what is being tested, some kind of measurement criteria. This can still be fine-tuned in terms of time specific, year specific, but what had helped Google specifically was to scale. To OKRs is one way of looking at things in terms of measuring. to scale a product and service. That's what we are trying to focus here. The last thing that what I would like to look at is, we were all talking about how it is related to today's world, right? Safe and design thinking works hand in hand. Now, if you look at this framework, I hope you are able to see this. Look at this point. This picture is a framework of how safe works. Okay. In this framework, they have prioritized design thinking, and they've laid out customer centricity is something that it should be a focus of. Design thinking should be something a focus of. This is where we actually use it in real term. So customer centricity is nothing like we understood the problem, we empathize. Design thinking is more about a double diamond problem, right? That what we talked about. Look at this design thinking. Look at this design thinking is what we already did. We first try to understand the problem and then try to come out with a solution. And we saw this sweet spot, right? Desirability, viability, feasibility. Desirability meaning what is the user actually wants. Viable is whether it is from a business standpoint of view, it is viable. Will it make revenues? Feasible, it's from a technical standpoint. So this is a picture from a safe framework, how design thinking is used. We first try to understand the problem. They use a lot of things like go and see for yourself, Gamba works, the personas. Then you have this for the design, the right solution. You have this empathy maps, journey maps, and to deliver this design, you have this prototypes. So this is very much applicable in safe framework. Customer centricity is one. They always talks about scaling, right? The arts that we talk about, it is not just small teams that SAFE talks about, right? Art talks about at least from a maximum of 125. Each art Agile release train team of teams would have at least 125. So from the start, they started looking at how to scale teams, how to design and deliver products of 500 member team, 1000 member team in terms of solution trains. They focused on innovation. When they had, say, for example, 5 sprints for a product increment, the last sprint would be more of innovation. How do I improve that product? How do I refactor things? What do I add more? From the first, this SAFE framework was looking at how teams which are of 500,000 member team can work together. How I can plan a product increment plan. How I can integrate a team, how that can be integrated through DevOps and make a big product. How demos can be showcased from an 10-member team, 100-member team. So design thinking is very much into scale frameworks. All that I'm trying to put across is they're all part of the same tree. And there are many features that were influenced from design thinking that was implemented in SAFE, and SAFE literally has design thinking in their framework in terms of planning, in terms of providing demos, in terms of forming teams. Everywhere they thought about scaling. That was the thing that what they influenced from design thinking. I stop here. So all my reference was from a book called Design Your Thinking. It's a quite nominal cost. It was written by Pawan Soni. Please find time to read this book. So I've taken a reference from this book, and all the examples and all the information that I picked up was from this book. Please find time to read this book whenever you find time. Before that, any queries till now? So I'd like to pass here. Any questions, queries, discussion points?
Rajan, actually, the session was really very much interesting. A lot of new things we understood in more depth. So thank you.
if anybody wants to make some discussion points, let's make use of this session. Any thoughts? Anything that is different? Anything that can be fine-tuned? So I would suggest to read this book. It's a very nominal cost, and it's a very good book. Design your thinking. So ideally, what we look at is how do we try to look at it in terms of how do we use it in real-term world. So when you talk about Prasanna, when you talk about innovative products, it's something spectacular. Anything that product or service that we do, how do we make it something different, which is marketable, scalable? That's why we say that is innovative.
Thank you, Rajan, for clarifying. And also, what I would also want to understand is whether design thinking is only part of SAFe framework. Does it not come under disciplined agile framework as well, which is suggested by PMI?
No, it is not software specific. This design thinking can be used. It is used from 1960s and 1970s. Samsung has used it from 1970s. Any product or any service, it's nothing related to a software company or a framework.
Or a framework.
In any product that we use on a daily use, somehow or the other, like what I said, the Aether experience that they used to coin the word experience centers, which I never knew what is it all about. But they've used this design thinking. Flipkart has used, Amazon has used. So they may not coin this word called design thinking, but the understanding meaning here is the customer is the boss. He's at the focus at any point of time. That's the whole focus here. It need not be a kind of software related. It can be a toothbrush, a sports shoes. It can be anything. The IDEO video that we saw, they had made a lot of products, right? So it relates to everything that what we use.
Thanks, Rajan, for giving great clarity. I think design thinking is something which is new to me because I'm from the software industry, where more about releasing and uplifting software. So I think this is something new to me. Thanks, Rajan.
Any other discussion points? All right. We don't have any. Thanks for hearing me out. Thanks for your time. Thank you all. Thanks. Bye-bye.
You.